Hello humans, hello humans. It's January 20th. It's like heading towards 10 o'clock. I'm in my sand car, so it's going to sound a bit different. Got to head down coast and go do some stuff, meet some people, pick up a few things. Running a little bit late. It's not too bad. Anyway, so we're definitely entering into hyper novelty, and a lot of people are starting to experience it and freak out a little bit. We saw, for instance, Heather Haying, who is Brett Weinstein's wife, expressing that, you know, that this is a crazy-making way to live, right? Because she was saying they were going to have to examine everybody that they'd ever met and, you know, what they say. Is there anything that would indicate that they were like controlled opposition and all of this, right? So I don't think that Brett Weinstein or Heather are like, you know, paid controlled opposition kind of guys. I don't really see that as the mechanism. If they are, it is a little bit more subtle to the point that they can't pick it up. So they may well end up getting corralled. Okay, so that's trying to happen right now. People running around and trying to corral influencers into networks, and then they'll be able to control the people through the networks. So Naomi Wolf is now associated with this particular little network, some of whom, the rumors are being paid $70,000 a month to be content creators for this network. It's a lot of fucking money, but anyway, so, you know, so now we have to examine all of this kind of stuff. Is, you know, any given influencer part of someone's network, and are they being duplicitous in what they're saying because they are being paid to, right? This is basically what Heather is alluding to, that you can't trust anything. There is no longer an authority for anything, and it's driving her crazy, right? Especially academics, because they rely on the ability to say, I think this, and then they point at a reference or a study, a piece of paper, a documentation somewhere as an authority for why they think that, right? That backs up their thinking of XYZ because there was a study of XYZ, and they're just going to point to the study. Now, these guys read studies, they know about them, they'll critique them, you know, for a lay audience, and so they know how to read these things. Most people do not. But even Brett and Heather have yet to come to the conclusion, and it will expire in mere minutes in oxygen. And so once it's exposed, once it's got its wrapper dried, you know, the mucus dried, or however it's being spread in a natural kind of an environment, it dries off and it's harmless in mere minutes. Anyway, though, so Brett and Heather are now having to deal with hyper novelty to the point where there is no authority. So they're going to have to go back and examine all of their relationships. Are they being played? And so this is going to make Heather paranoid, and this makes her feel crazy, right? This is very much a crazy making situation for her. And this is going to be what hyper novelty is going to be like for, it will taint the experience of hyper novelty for probably almost all of the normies, no matter what their former or their previous positions in normie world. They will be experiencing hyper novelty, as does Heather, as this an untethered Heather. Okay, so that's what she's feeling. There's no rope anchoring her to anything. She's free to float about anywhere she wants to go. Now, some of us, like iconoclasts and other internet nut jobs, we think this is pretty cool, right? We're free to explore what we want. We don't have any constraints. Basically you can't stand up there and say I'm an authority because I'm a PhD, and you can't debate me because you don't have my years of experience and or training. And then, so now our response is, well, we now know that your training deliberately constrained your mind and blinded you to certain shit, and you were not shown certain shit deliberately, so that your training is itself bogus. It's suspect. It can't be relied on. So your PhD means exactly toilet paper, right? And it's how well you think under the moment in our current set of situations that's going to make me rely on your information to some degree or not. So now we're into a really strange world for all these academics and for the rest of normies. And we see this with Heather's extreme frustration with their situation, because they've got people calling Brett and Heather to, just because she's associated, calling him as controlled opposition. And he may well be and not understand that he's being controlled, right? So, because it can be that subtle. That, these guys are masters of organization. They just set up the Elohim worship cult. They just set up the organizations and let the organizations do what they want. They only have to push the organization a little tiny bit in order to get the organization itself to do what they want. So this is going to be, this is how rough it's going to be, right? Brett and Heather is like, Brett's confused, okay? He does not yet know how to react to all of this. And he's got some initial reactions. He doesn't know how to respond to it, rather, sorry. He has some initial reactions, but he does not yet have a formulated response as to how he's going to do this. And, us woo guys, we've got like formulated responses. We know what the fuck we're doing, right? It's all woo out there. You can't trust shit. And, the Elohim worship cult is behind it all, and all these fuckers are lying to you, and they've all trying to game you, or, it's a big fucking agenda, and there's space aliens in the mix. And that's kind of a funny thing. If you go back and find, and I don't know where it would be, maybe it's on YouTube or Odyssey or someplace, and find Brett and Heather's first Dark Horse podcast, I was one of the first people to do a super chat with them. And I gave them $200, which blew her away, right? They'd had a $20 super chat, and I popped up $200. Well, I'm a crazy fucker, and I wanted to know. They answered questions for super chats at that point. That was how they were doing it. This is long before they had their Patreon accounts or any of that kind of thing, right? Anyway, so what I wanted to know was, had they ever taken into account the idea of space aliens in their thinking about evolution? And Brett was put in a really difficult situation as husband to Heather, because Heather blew me off. She didn't even want to address the question. She thought it was just so crazy it wasn't even worth thinking about, right? Wasn't even worth opening her mouth about, and she was just dismissive. She kept the $200, but she wasn't really willing to divulge how she thought about it. And Brett gave kind of a half-assed answer because he didn't want to piss her off. She wanted him to also have that attitude about my question about the space aliens. And it told me everything I needed to know, right? It told me how rigid her mind was, what their inner dynamic was between the two of them, both professionally and personally, and a whole bunch of stuff. So I felt, it was $200 very well spent. And I knew at that point I had found a couple of very key personalities to monitor for the changes and shit that I knew I was going to be seeing here, right? And so it worked out fine for me. But it's just really, ironic that that question about the aliens, the very first big super chat they'd had, and where we're at now, several years later. And as we head into, meeting the neighbors, getting to know the space aliens out and about over the course of this year. And also, alien reproduction vehicles and shit, right? So, hypernovelty is that way. Hypernovelty is no authority, and those people that are used to authorities are anchorless, right? They're untethered. They're the untethered heather. And this is going to make them a little freaked out pretty much all the time, right? So Brett's just getting a little freaked out just because of his use of the word dream team, and he had a decent concept. It was a decent idea about how the silly mother weffers in what they were doing was causing their own opposition to emerge, and they were strengthening their own opposition. It was sort of he'd caught a little flavor of Sun Tzu and the art of war kind of thing, and he was real pleased about it. He talks to Tucker about it, and Tucker Carlson lets him go on and blah blah blah. And Brett makes this offhanded remark. It wasn't really like he was. It was a considered point. The point was these people are going to gang up on what he calls Goliath. Okay, and it's not really Goliath. It's just a lot of small-minded psychopaths and their little cadres of sociopaths that they have with them, right? So it's not like a giant thing that's going to defeat us. It's not biblical in nature, as much as Bo Polney and these kind of guys want to say it is. Or if you want to say that it is biblical, okay, then it is the ultimate in biblical, because nothing about the Bible is translated correctly. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The whole thing is like seriously a put-up job. There's so many layers of subterfuge and deception in all of these translations, all the way back to the translations from Aramaic into Greek for the New Testament, and also into the Vulgate Latin for the Old Testament. And I've been really looking into it. I hate doing all this Bible shit because it's stupid, right? It's, in my opinion, it's useless. It does not matter to me at that level. I'm just doing it for sussing out what's there, but I don't care to actually know which was the quote authentic book of the Bible, because in my opinion they're all useless, right? It does not matter to me if Bo Polney says that the such and such happened in such and such a place as part of Daniel's timeline, and it means this. It absolutely has no meaning to me at all relative to our current situation, because all of the Bible is based on lies taken from journals about how our ancestors survived the space aliens. So in that sense, the Bible is a chronicle. The Old Testament is simply a chronicle of these people surviving the space aliens, right? There's no God in there. There's no divine any fucking thing in there. These were space aliens that came down and fucked with humanity. Humanity existed long before the Elohim and these space aliens came on down. And Genesis does not, if you go read the original, the source material for Genesis doesn't say any of the things that the Christians say that it does, right? Doesn't relate to God creating man or any of that shit. That is all a lie from the Elohim. So, given that, right, given that there, in my opinion, the Bible has no authority, then I don't see the Jews as anything more than a twisted, that's the difference between Christianity and Judaism, basically, because they both worship the Elohim. So, Bo Polney worships an Elohim. Further, he worships Jews. Okay, he's so enamored in what these ancient Judeans did, the times and all of that kind of stuff, that it makes his mind all sparkly and light up, and it's totally meaningless. Who gives a rat's ass if Lord Yahweh made his tribe of Judeans? It does not matter. It in no way was Lord Yahweh around now. He's not influencing any of our events now. He's not God. So under the circumstances, why pay any attention to him at all, right? Well, it's a really complex Stockholm syndrome thing that is spread out all over humanity. We've got a huge Elohim problem. And this Stockholm complex is not limited to the Jews, right? It affects all of us. It affects the Christians, the Muslims, Buddhists even, right? Everybody is affected by the Stockholm syndrome of us being abused for thousands of years by these space aliens. And it is these sets of circumstances that allow people to stand up and say that this book has any authority at all. And it is a common acceptance aspect of it that lets other people, not be really abusive to them for getting up in their case, right? So now when I'm confronted by evangelical Christians, I ask them straight up, okay, so which of the Elohim are you worshiping? Which of the Elohim is your God? And then it degrades from there because they have no way of responding. They don't even know what the fucking Elohim is. And then when you point it out that there is no word for God in the Old Testament, they fucking freak out on you. They call you all kinds of really horrible names. And I'm not trying to do anything. I just don't want these fuckers up in my face about their space alien cult worship. And that's what it is. See, they're not worshiping God. Bo Polney in no way worships it, I can't say that. Bo Polney may very well just be running a game on everybody and harmonizing with all this Christian shit in order to make money. Okay, that's really what it seems like. And what's he going to do when all these things that he prophesies actually happen, if any of them do? Well, he won't be able to make money and, all of this kind of stuff because the system will be gone. He does not understand that he's his ass alive, and it's simply not going to be as he might think in terms of his response to this situation after it all goes down, after it all happens. A lot of Christians are going to be in that same boat, right? They're going to be untethered heathers. And they're going to be freaking out. They'll be, trying to pull your hair out. They'll be just losing their minds because they won't have that anchor, and it's been there all of their lives. And we will also have this effect on the social order. And so this, I think, is what 107 is all about. Just saw a sign there for a town hall meeting in this local little burg that isn't even really a town, this little white spot in the road. And they're going to have a town hall meeting about national issues. I wonder if that's the invaders. We're seeing a lot of that. They're not forming militias. These are simply town meetings. Anyway, though, so the opening of all of these issues relative to the religion and stuff has already happened. It's going to get much worse as the space aliens start coming down here, and it'll really get strange. For whatever the fuck reason they say, this is going to just freak out all kinds of people. And the Biden regime has no hope of coping. They just do not even know. They don't have any clue as to what they're going to do about this. Hang on, got a road hazard here. We've had so much in the way of down trees and stuff. You expect driving along that you're going to get this situation no matter what. Oh, they're pulling out huge chunks of trees. Man, that thing's got to be 3 foot across, the log sections. Anyway, so the effect on the social order will be mirroring Heather, and it'd be like Heather on untethered Heather on lots of caffeine. Okay, it's going to be really, really intense for some period of time as we get into all this, and we'll see the signs of it. We're seeing the signs of it now. It'll really pick up. The woo people will be able to point out all kinds of incidences of this. As I was saying, by the first week of April, that looks to be pretty solid in terms of a forecast. And then we'll have most of the normies start really understanding what's going on, or at least not understanding, but at least being aware that something is happening. And we'll have that happen about mid-June, I think, that we'll have some level of normie shock, and maybe we'll start seeing information about normie shock in the mainstream media, that kind of thing, right? Where they'll talk about people just suddenly stopping in the middle of the road, and they don't make sense, and you can't get their attention really, and they're not comatose, but they're shell shock, right? Their brains simply are not working because of an overload. Anyway, so it's going to be an interesting year that way. We'll see all kinds of stuff come out. There are people trying to corral influencers. Okay, so they're trying to corral and direct and change the direction of influencers like Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic and others. Okay, so I've also been pushed on by some of these people that are trying to corral the thought patterns of stuff. These guys that are doing this, that have approached myself and Jean-Claude and a couple of other people I've talked to, these guys don't want alien discussion, okay? So they don't want that to appear. They've got their own agenda. They want to take us through a political reworking of the USA and recover the Republic and kick out the communists, and they don't want to bring up the aliens. Their problem is, which is fine, I understand why they want to do it, because they want to keep all the Christian nationalists together in a cohesive bloc and all of this kind of stuff, right? So they don't want anything upsetting their apple carts. And their problem is that they've already lost steerage. Okay, you got to be in a canoe or some other thing where you float down a river or float in water. You've got to be moving faster than the current in order to be able to steer that boat. If you're moving with the current, you have no hope of getting any steerage at all. And so these corralling people have actually lost it, in my opinion. They've lost steerage. They're no longer moving faster than the linguistics. They're not able to control things in this regard. And they've got real problems, and they do not recognize it. And so even their actions of trying to control people to say, don't talk about UFOs, don't bring up UFOs, even that is a sign that their steerage has gone. And they're trying to play catch up. And so they're so obtuse to what's going on in that regard, they don't even recognize that this is the case. So, interesting period of time. We'll see how much of the corral stuff turns out to be, I won't say beneficial, but at least benevolent, okay? And not necessarily geared towards further evil. That should emerge here. We should start seeing more and more of that in, I think, into April. Okay, so we should see a lot of that into April. We should start seeing a lot more as part of the hyper novelty. We're bound to get a situation where all of the influencers lost their ability to be authorities. You know, even authority from people you've trusted for these past few years is going to go away. You will not be able to rely on anything just because of the nature of what we're going to be going through here. And you'll see that reflected in all of the untethered heathers around you. And these guys are going to be, they'll be most annoying probably. Anyway, I'm here at this first stop. I got to stop and get some stuff here and pick up this package. But I'll do another one of these on the way back. The last time I had done one of these talks, my recorder fucked up. So it has a little micro SD card in it, and that micro SD card wasn't seated properly. And so the first talk didn't get recorded, and I didn't understand that until later on. Anyway, so hyper novelty, you're going to lose the authority of your influencers. A lot of those are going to be discovered to be part of controlled opposition networks. Some of them are not willingly. They're just, co-opted by the circumstances and the money and not being paranoid. Anyway, so I feel bad for Brett. I don't think he's actually, I think he may indeed be in one of these networks like Amazing Polly has indicated, but I just don't think that he's actually one of the guys, right? I don't think he is evil, self-serving, that kind of thing, right? Nor do I think his brother is, Eric, but I think his brother is a real ass. And he's got all kinds of emotional issues. Okay, let me get all this stuff here. Okay, all right, I'll talk to you guys later, and we'll do some more of this rambling. But of course, you won't pay attention to any of it because we're into hyper novelty, and you got to figure this shit out on your own.